And joining us now is a former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, great to have you here. We were talking at the top, this terrible news about the two Navy SEALs who have now been presumed dead. And they were saying it's been 151 attacks by these Iranian proxy groups on U.S. bases, including over the weekend at our base Al Udeid there in Iraq. This is it's like these little pinprick responses. Everyone's saying, when is Biden going to finally do something about Iran? Your thoughts?
Well, it's very distressing to me that he simply won't acknowledge that Iran is behind all of this violence in the Middle East, beginning with the Hamas attack on October the 7th, what the Houthis are trying to do to close shipping in the Red Sea, the Hezbollah attacks on Israel in the north, and the Shia militia attacks on, as you say now, over 150 since October the 7th in Syria and Iraq on our military personnel and on our embassy and civilian personnel too, plus going after shipping in the Arabian Sea, seizing the ship that was still under supervision of a U.S. court in Texas for violating our sanctions. Iran is at the source of this. Iran is arming, equipping, training, financing all these terrorist groups. It has actively struck Israeli consulates and maybe whatever else they were inside Iraq. They've attacked in Pakistan, and to this point, other than Pakistan attacking terrorist groups inside Iran has felt no pain at all since October the 7th. If the administration can't see what's happening and doesn't understand that to restore any kind of deterrence, let alone appropriate retaliation for the risks that these terrorist surrogates are imposing, if we can't make that into a campaign issue this year, I don't know what we can.
Wow. And tell us, have you figured out whose side is who and who's funding who in Iran? Well, Iran we know is the Houthis, the Hezbollah, and the
right. It all comes from Iran, and they may have others.
Saudi Arabia is ISIS, right?
Well, there are people in Saudi Arabia who are extremists who have funded groups, terrorist groups, without question, and still are, including what amounted to the attack on us on September the 11th. But right now, what you see is Iran's strategy they call the Ring of Fire around Israel, but it affects Saudi Arabia, it affects the other oil-producing Arab states on the peninsula, and it affects us. I mean, these are American casualties in this war that Iran has produced, and the recent attack on our base in Iran, even the administration conceded were casualties, including potential brain injuries. And I think I've mentioned to you before, our military say the only reason we haven't had a mass casualty event, I mean something very serious involving American casualties in Iraq, is luck. And that's not a strategy. It doesn't tell Iran that they will pay a severe price if they continue their activity. When are they going to stop if they're not feeling any pain?
Yeah, good point. We are talking to former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Judge Weinberg.
Mr. Ambassador, good to talk to you again. There's a lot of talk about imposing from the outside a two-state solution on Israel and the Palestinians. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I don't think imposing a two-state solution will work fundamentally because the two-state solution won't work. It's been demonstrated now that inside Gaza, Hamas was building a terrorist state. And what country, what free country would ever accept having a terrorist state on its border? I mean, the fact is, and this goes back decades, the whole idea that the Gaza Strip and some dots of territory on the West Bank could constitute an economically viable independent state were always wrong. And I think this has now been proven beyond a doubt. So what we really need to do to have compassion for the Palestinian people, and especially the people in Gaza, is find resettlement for them. They're not going to go back into Israel after October 7th. The Arab states were the ones who in the 1950s and 1960s weaponized the Palestinians against Israel. And it seems to me it's now their burden, their obligation. They say they don't want the Palestinians. What does that tell you? Does that mean they're Israel's problem? I think it's time for the Arab world to recognize that real peace and stability will come when the Palestinians who have been abused the way they have been as weapons against Israel over the years get an economic future for themselves and their children. That's only going to come in countries where there are viable economies. It's not going to come in the Gaza Strip.
John, this is Pete King. First of all, thanks as always for your great commentary. How long do you think Netanyahu can stand up, though, to President Biden as trying to impose the two-state solution? Is Netanyahu strong enough politically to resist that pressure?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but I think the mood in Israel, having seen a second Holocaust right in front of them on October the 7th, are not going to bend under this kind of pressure. And I think there's another mistake the administration is displaying here. You know, this is a very serious conflict that's going on in the Middle East, and even if your objective were simply to bring it to a halt, you have to do that with limited near-term objectives. Instead, the administration is saying the way to solve this terrible war that's been inflicted on Israel is to achieve the settlement that in 75 years nobody else has been able to achieve.
Oops, we're losing you a little bit there. You know, by the way, Ambassador, I don't know if you saw this, guys. A senior Hamas officer is openly rejecting the two-state solution, saying no, Israel, it has to have a demise of Israel. So, I mean, they're not fair brokers by any sense of the word. I mean, it's ridiculous.
They've never given up their objective when they say from the river to the sea. That means driving Israel into the Mediterranean. That's what the Palestinians have been weaponized for decades. And that's why simply putting them back in the Gaza Strip is not going to solve the problem. It's not a viable economy. It will remain a big refugee camp, which only sows the seeds of another conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, former UN Ambassador John Bolton, we love having you here on Katz and Cosby. Thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.